All right, well, yes, indeed. Good evening and welcome aboard. It is the Rob Breakenridge Show on a Thursday evening. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight across Alberta on the Chorus Radio Network. So much to get to here this evening. Your calls, of course, in Edmonton, 780-496-0063. In Calgary, 403-974-8255. Send us your text as well, 770-770, and get at us on Twitter as well, at Rob Breakenridge. Later in this hour, we'll be talking about measles and vaccines. Andre Picard with the Globe and Mail is going to be with us. 2 confirmed cases this week in Calgary, 1 confirmed case in Edmonton. We got an outbreak in BC in the Fraser Valley where they've had more than 300 cases. Now, it was 1998 when we officially eradicated measles, and cases had been dropping considerably before that with the advent of the measles vaccine. So why are we seeing measles making a comeback? Is it making a comeback? And is it because people are not getting vaccinated? We'll get into that coming up later in this hour. After 10 o'clock tonight, a great story. We're going to hear from a retired teacher in Saskatchewan who's following through on a commitment he made to his students more than 20 years ago now. These grade 9 students at the time were told to write letters to their future selves. And he told these kids, I am going to track you down and send these letters to you in 20 years. I think most of the kids probably didn't believe him. And over the years, I'm sure most of them probably forgot. Until one day, lo and behold, what shows up in the mail but that letter to yourself from 20 or more years ago. It's a great story. We'll hear from the teacher behind it. He's going to join us in about an hour from now. Got some other news to get to here tonight. As mentioned, your calls, all of that straight ahead. Let's begin this evening, though, with a conversation around the concept of gay-straight alliances. We're seeing more and more of these in schools across the country, which are pretty much as they sound. Students banding together to send a message and to provide some moral support to gays and lesbians in school who might feel isolated, who might be victims of bullying. And in fact, the stats seem to show that for kids like this, that bullying rates are much higher than average. So I think these are great. And I mean, it shows that kids care about these issues and they're willing to stand up for their fellow students. And I think it promotes tolerance and inclusiveness. And this is, student-driven. This isn't the school forcing anything on anybody. This is kind of the school, or at least it should be, the school sort of standing back and letting the kids take the lead on this. But unfortunately, right now, schools can veto this. Schools can say to these kids, well, this great thing you want to do, forget it. You can't do it. Liberal education critic Kent Hare has introduced a motion in the Alberta legislature that would essentially prevent schools from preventing this. Now, it seems pretty straightforward. The Education Minister, Jeff Johnson, has indicated in the past his support for student-led gay-straight alliances, but they're not going to support this motion because they don't want to force schools to allow this. They believe in particular that Catholic schools shouldn't have to do this if it goes against their teachings. Well, wait a second. Are there gay kids in Catholic schools? If not, then I guess Catholic schools got nothing to worry about. And if there are, well, what kind of message are we sending by saying, well, these gay kids in Catholic schools, they don't deserve the same kind of support as gay kids in public schools? Well, joining us for some further thoughts on all of this, very pleased to welcome back to the program our friend Luke Fevin. He is founder of Alberta Parents for Unbiased Public Inclusive Learning, also known as A Pupil, and you can find them on Facebook. Luke, great to have you with us here. Welcome to the program.
Great to be with you again, Rob.
There seem to be a lot of parallels, I think, to some of the other issues that we've talked about in the past and that your group has been speaking out about. What do you make of how this is playing out?
Well, I'm very sad for the LGBTQ gay community. They seem to suffer an awful lot at the hands of religious beliefs at the best of times, and one would like to think that children, and some of the most at-risk children in our schools, would be better protected than they are being by our education minister and the education system.
And that would seem to be. I mean, I can't see any other reason that's being cited here for not going ahead with this. I mean, the objections seem to be pretty much entirely religious.
Yes, it's, one of the things I think we have to do here, Rob, is kind of suck it up. Nobody really likes talking about religion. I think for those that are devoutly religious, it concerns them. They think something's going to get taken away. Atheists have their pitchforks, and they don't want to talk about it. And I think most of the people in the middle are kind of, nervous about the conversation about religion. But we can't shy away from this. We're talking about our children's education system, and we're talking about their well-being. And whether we like it or not, religion is entrenched into the education system here in Alberta. And, there are times where we need to have a conversation about, in fact, I'll roll it into three conversations. The first conversation is a general one. What is the role of religion in our schools? What should that look like? Perhaps there's a second conversation, which is, should we privilege religion, or should we privilege one particular religion in our school system? And I think that's a second conversation. But I think the obvious conversation, the conversation today, is should we be privileging religion in our schools to the point that it's actually denying other people their rights? And I really don't see the argument here for religious privilege at the cost of other people's rights, especially vulnerable kids.
Well, I agree with that. The problem is I don't even really see why this has to be an issue of religious freedoms. I don't know how anybody's religious freedom is being infringed by kids at a school getting together and on their own and promoting tolerance. How is that trampling on anybody's religion?
Well, it's not. I mean, it's back to the whole gay marriage argument. If you're not in favor of gay marriage, then don't get gay married.
Well, that's true.
But unfortunately, we see a lot of religious belief or religious privilege seem to extend to restricting other people from doing things or having power and control over other people. One of the things that stood out to me when I was looking at this is we're just redoing our Education Act for the first time in 30 years right now. And you would think that there's a piece of legislation in the Education Act that very specifically describes how my 8-year-old daughter can be asked to leave her classroom and stand in a corridor on her own so that her Christian classmates can all pray to a Christian God in our multicultural, safe and caring, inclusive public schools. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter where you go with Alberta education, you cannot escape the language safe, caring and inclusive. It's everywhere. But sadly, it's something we only give lip service to. And the one area where we really give up the concept of safe, caring and inclusiveness is to accommodate religious privilege.
I also wanted to ask you about the position here of the Alberta School Boards Association, which, as I read here in the Calgary Herald, says they say this is a one-size-fits-all policy that could constrain boards from meeting the needs of their communities. What does that even mean?
Well, I'm pleased you make an excellent point. One of the things that stood out to me, and even Kent Hare, has really couched his language for the most part. And when people talk about some groups and those people, and no one's actually saying, religious groups, religious people, Catholics, no one else is looking to vote away someone else's freedoms. There's only one group looking to do that, and it's religious people. Not all religious people, and not every religion, but it is only those of faith in our schools that want to, our situation with the prayer. Multiple courts in Canada had ruled that, doing the prayer, segregating for the prayer and all this kind of stuff denied non-Christian students fundamental freedoms as promised to them by the Charter. And yet, the school board believed that if the majority of parents wanted it, they could actually vote away those rights. And they did. The Charter, again, promises the gay community that they shall not be discriminated based on sexual orientation. But again, we're seeing here school boards and people of faith thinking that they have the ability to vote away those rights. And that's what's so wrong with this situation.
There's a quote from Kent Hare where he says, "I want to err on the side of making kids' lives better, and I'm not so much worried about people and their religious values." As you alluded to earlier, we don't often hear politicians speak in such terms, do we?
No, I cheered out loud when I saw that. I really admire him for that. My guess, actually, is that it probably slipped out, and that Kent perhaps didn't mean to word it in such a specific way, but he did. It's out, and I think he's taken a lot of positive plaudits for that stand. You know, at the end of the day, if the focus of our schools isn't genuinely about being safe and caring and inclusive and the well-being of our children, if we're really going to compromise on those things for religious privilege, then I think we're doing schooling wrong.
Well, the word from the education minister, at least his press secretary, is that they claim to support gay-straight alliances, but they say at this point in time we will not mandate that all school boards provide for GSA. So essentially, they say they support it, but this isn't going to happen.
No, that's right. It doesn't surprise me. You know, this reminds me of Dave Hancock when he was education minister, and we had the Morinville issue. You know, Mr. Hancock just wanted nothing to do with it. You know, there was a clear rights violation going on for a bunch of people. That was borne out by how the situation was resolved. But Mr. Hancock wanted nothing to do with it. And again, it just shows a lack of leadership. It reminds me, not educational, but it certainly touches the gay community. It reminds me of Danielle Smith and the Lake of Fire issue. You know, it's a lack of leadership for saying, you know, these are the principles, this is what's important, this is what we're going to stand on. And I would hope that Jeff Johnson, in charge of our children's schooling, would have the moral fortitude to actually stand up to these demands for religious privilege.
Well, well, it's what he's saying, isn't it, I guess, that we support this. We would like it to happen, but because there were those who would prefer to discriminate in that sense, we're just going to stand by and allow that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, again, I know this is a conversation that makes people uncomfortable, but, you know, let's be clear that religious groups do a great job of mobilizing when they need to mobilize. They do a great job of ganging together, coming together, and mobilizing as a group. And if you are someone who is an elected official, the last group that you want to annoy is a group of Christians. You know, that's a big voting bloc that could potentially turn on you, either in a trustee election or as an MLA or in a provincial election. And let's not forget that, you know, another ex-education minister, Mr. Lukaszuk, you know, when he tried to tie the Human Rights Act to the Education Act a few years ago, I mean, he received death threats from religious people. You know, when you do things that are really about religious freedom and that are really about equality and that are really about ending discrimination, but that can be twisted and misconstrued as being anti-religious, you really open yourself up to a lot of difficult pushback.
Well, it is also worth noting here that there, at least as a quote from Sandra Jansen anyway, who was the Associate Minister of Family and Community Safety, who was sort of appointed as kind of a bullying minister, she has said that she is prepared to support Kent Hare's motion and hopes that her colleagues in the PC party do the same. So even though the Education Minister says they won't support this, there does seem to be support for this within the governing party.
I would hope so. I think Monday's going to be an interesting day. I would hope to see a number break ranks. I mean, Kent has belabored this point, but it's not complicated. You know, GSAs, I mean, forget the fact that you discriminate against people by not allowing them to have them. But gay LGBTQ students are some of the most at-risk students and children that we have. The establishment of GSAs has been shown to reduce the amount of bullying amongst both gay and straight students. It's lowered the incidence of suicides. It's absolute madness to not mandate the allowance of GSAs, and that no one's forcing GSAs.
Right, exactly.
Let's be clear. No one's forcing people to have GSAs. Just if students request it, you cannot block or deny them. And to do so is absolute madness. And I'm not surprised, but I am profoundly disappointed once again by the politicians surrounding our children's education.
All right. Well, Luke, we'll leave it there for now. As you say, I don't think we've heard the last of this, but certainly do appreciate your input on this. And thanks again for joining us here tonight.
Good talking, Rob.
Take care, Luke. We'll talk again. Luke Fevin is the founder of the group A Pupil, Alberta Parents for Unbiased Public Inclusive Learning. You can find them on Facebook. So again, this is not forcing schools really to do anything. This would not be the province going to schools and saying, you must establish this and do that, et cetera, et cetera. Not at all. That's why this seems like such a no-brainer. Why should schools be allowed to veto what the kids themselves want to do? Kids banding together, forming a club that is meant to send a message of tolerance and inclusiveness. And saying to these kids who might otherwise feel alone, isolated, maybe have been bullied, you know what? We're going to stand with you. You know, to see kids brave enough to stand up and do that, and only to have them shouted down not by their fellow students, but by the school itself, by the principal and the administrators, to say, you cannot do that. No way. That's a terrible message. Look, nobody's forcing these schools to establish these clubs. No one's saying they must be mandatory at these schools. All this is saying is that kids who want to do this shouldn't be vetoed.